Okay, here we are in our wrap-up. We could have the slides up on the screen. Okay, so what we'd like to do in this panel session is to capture all of the themes, the main themes that we've heard throughout our conference, throughout our forum here. And then what we'd like to do then is pose some questions for discussion with our panelists here, but also with everybody who has participated. Most everybody is here in the front two rows, and with our audience. So we're going to have about 4 discussion questions to prompt that discussion, and then we're going to wrap up with next steps, really concrete next steps, and outline what those look like, and then seek your involvement in those next steps as well. And so what I'd like to do is start with I have the clicker. I actually haven't had to give a presentation. There we go. So it's quite wordy. I apologize for that. But I wanted to make sure that we had really captured the themes that we have touched on here. And and to begin with, I think, and I mentioned this earlier today, that a real overarching theme that I think is critical to any of the work that we've discussed thus far is our ability and our willingness to continue to collaborate together, to work together across entities, across authorities, across ports, NGOs, government entities, and community groups. So I wanted to kind of capture that overarching theme, that in order for any of the activities that we've discussed to really be successful, we have to have that. And we kept hearing that repeatedly throughout presentations, that when you had a success story, there were always multiple players from various backgrounds, various organizations that were involved. So I wanted to make sure I captured that. That's not really listed here, but I wanted that to be captured. And the way we're going to proceed from here is my colleague here from the Port of LA, Lisa Wunder, will be facilitating back and forth, capturing these themes, and then facilitating the discussion. So very fluid, quite informal, but I just wanted to let you all know that that's how we're going to proceed. So with that, I'm going to let Lisa provide some remarks and begin with the themes that we have listed here.
Hello, everybody. Before we get started, I just wanted to share my one takeaway from the last day and a half here, and that was my thoughts after seeing the beautiful rendering of the ideas that are going to happen in the next few years for the port of Kaohsiung. And we all saw that beautiful video, and what I was thinking is, isn't that what we really want for all our ports? Not only a place of economic prosperity, but a beautiful place that is a source of pride for our community, and a place that will bring tourism and prosperity to the port. So in that way, I think that can really facilitate the idea of how we can all work together for this common goal of ports in the future. So with that, I'm going to go to number 1 of our themes and probably just read it almost verbatim. One of the things we discussed over the last day and a half was our defining sustainability for ports, marine vessels, and goods movement, including a multitude of environmental aspects: air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, water quality, port land revitalization, repurposing for community business uses, ecosystem restoration, vector and invasive species control, community human health, well-being, quality of life, and continued economic opportunity for ports and communities. And this goes back to the basic definition of sustainability, which is the pyramid that many people have seen, where you balance environment, economy, and community.
Okay, thank you. And we're just going to go back and forth here. I'm going to go over the second theme. And at the end here, we would like to open it up to make sure that we haven't missed anything to our panelists here and to our speakers and to the audience. So the second theme that we captured here is a more full understanding of the costs and benefits in terms of the environmental and human health impacts I think has been conveyed. Of course, it's extremely complicated and differs from region to region, but I think we have accomplished an understanding that those costs and benefits are real, and we need to learn how to maximize those benefits with less cost. Let's see. And how these drivers, such as health benefits, can drive voluntary and regulatory sustainability strategies.
Yeah, we've seen concrete numbers for certain regions on the number of deaths in the region that could possibly be attributed to shipping operations. And we've also seen cost-benefit analysis from several presenters that show up to a 30-to-1 cost-benefit to health risk for each dollar invested in pollution control. So on to number 3. Cost-effective solutions are available and can be more available globally if consistent and complementary sustainability strategies are adopted for ports and marine vessels across the Pacific and around the world. Also, one thing that we've seen that's really resonated is we're all looking in very many cases at the same strategies. It's just our continued collaboration and aligning these strategies. We all know that shipping lines, as was stated in the last panel, they want to have a uniform direction. They don't want the confusion of going to one port and having one set of rules and another port and having another set of rules. So that is one good topic for future collaboration.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the next the next theme, which is collaboration with all of the parties that are here, including international port, marine vessel and goods movement system partners, is critical to advancing environmental, economic, and community sustainability. And I think we've seen multiple examples of how those partnerships can come together, bring together effective and successful projects that result in emission reductions, health benefits, economic growth. So the collaboration is, again, a very critical theme and element, I think, to all of this work being able to continue to go forward and advance.
We've talked a little bit about the Pacific Ports Clean Air Collaborative and the World Ports Climate Initiative, and we're going to talk a little bit more about them in this session. And what I wanted to stress now, both of these organizations, there's no fee to join. You just need to be a willing participant interested in collaboration. And we look forward to more people participating.
And this is a little bit more of the same, but I think we've been successful here in identifying what the key partners are to continued collaboration, and this will come in one of our next steps, and including all of the organization types of partners that are listed here: environment, health, and port authorities, the ports themselves, shipping lines, terminal operators, not listed there, but NGOs, communities, and academia as well. And then we want to open it up to the panel here, to at least initially, to make sure that we've captured all the major themes. And if not, please don't be shy.
Originally, I think in the beginning of this year, Kaohsiung Port is a port authority. At that time, I think until now, even we have organization reform, we still to keep some operation, just like we accept a lot of new advanced concept and knowledge from all of the different party. Like we have a lot of class society. They have a major in ship safety and including the environment protection. So they plan and develop a lot of advanced program like EEDI, EEDP, and even the same program as the last panel, Professor Yu said. The best, I think the best optimize, I think that they say they optimize and the best route decision. They open just like NK, they open a internet website to supply. I think it's free of charge, to supply all the information for the ship captain to make the best route to minimize, the fuel consumption and more quickly and more safely. And actually, following this concept, we do a lot of long time. Even we not prepare a lot of budget to support some incentive based on our Vice President, Mr. Tsai, said this morning. But we do, and we prepare all the infrastructure and the ability, and cooperate with all the special technology class society like ABS, CR, NK, BV, DNV, GL, etc. And also cooperate with the university to learn a lot of knowledge and follow up with the international convention and the international trends. So we prepare all the capability to make sure we can do as soon as possible.
Are there any other themes here that we may not have captured? What I heard, at least a little bit there, is continued cooperation and collaboration, and in particular with international partners. I think that's really critical, and keeping your kind of finger on the pulse of what's going on internationally, I think is really important as well. Are there other themes that we have not captured that folks would like to chime in on?
Thank you, Penny. Maybe it's not another theme that we've missed out here, but rather, I would like to, share something from an NGO or an independent think tank's point of view. We are only a small organization of less than 10 people. And actually, the number of people working on ship emissions and related topics is like, 2 or 3 people in my organization. My point is, you don't need a big group to start something important or some good works. I think it's the determination and the will to make a start, and then to find your partners and collaborators to build the momentum, and then you can make a difference. So what I'm saying is, I'm not anti collaboration, but actually you don't have to wait until a lot of people coming to you and ask you to join before you start your work. I think we can all play an important role in this important topic. Even if you are only a resident living in a small district close to the port area, maybe by raising awareness of your neighbors and your families, you are already starting something really important and potential. So this is how we have started our work in Hong Kong, by just looking outside the window, looking at all the ships in the harbor, feeling the pollution and the impact that's drawing upon us, and the potential problem that is causing Hong Kong. That trigger us to think a lot more about the problem and try to find ways to understand. So we started with the internet. We searched in the Port of LA, Port of Long Beach 4 or 5 years ago. We tried to learn a bit more, bit by bit, from what you have been doing on the West Coast. And then we understand that all these best practice actually don't require a lot of regulation to start with. Some of those are voluntary actions. And then by bringing that idea to Hong Kong and start talking to shipping lines like Maersk Line, OCL, these are important people, these are business people. Now, it seems that we shouldn't mix together quite well, because they are trying to make money. We're trying to make sure that the environment is clean. It seems that there are, some distance between, our philosophy. But we need to bring them in, engage them, sit across the table, start understanding their problems and what's their view about this important topic. They are already doing something similar in the US, in Europe. And by having those conversations, we began to understand that actually we are very close to one another. We share the same vision, and there are ways that we can continue with that kind of work, that kind of collaboration, to make it important and to make it noted by the government. And with that, the government began to think about regulation and start, being part of that process. Because right at the beginning, actually, the government in Hong Kong, they are, not in the equation. They are not even in the room. This is just between us and the shipping lines. But after 1 or 2 years, they are already coming in. They would like to be involved. And now they are providing some financial support. to encourage the ships to continue to switch to low sulfur fuel in Hong Kong. So if I recall what was happening like 4 or 5 years ago, I mean I wouldn't imagine it would brought us to this stage that I'm in this room sharing with you what's happened in Hong Kong, and these are the good examples that maybe you can also adopt in your city. So my message is strong and clear. You can start anything important if you have the determination. If you really find it important, then try to grasp it and try to to go. Action is more important than talking.
I think the important insight that I will choose to remember from, especially from today, where we had lots and lots of very good examples of success or of steps forward in vision, is that there are multiple ways to get freight where it will be innovating to in the next decades. And one of the things that often happens in a competitive environment, as was discussed in the roundtable questions at one point, is that there's a bit of competition, there's a bit of ownership. There's the Environmental Shipping Index, there's the shippingefficiency.org index, there's the Clean Cargo Index, everybody's working in a semi-competitive way, even among NGOs, even among port authorities, even among the ports themselves and the operators. What's really important to take away is that the dialogue, the opportunity to share those ideas creates more platforms for ways forward than it does differences. Some work that Stephanie presented on looking at the importance of logistics. The choice of your route determines so much about the pattern of your footprint and who gets exposed. And yet, every port could show where they have certain strengths when their ports are chosen for logistics. So logistics is one part, planning is one part, and the key thing is that everybody's working hard to get off the bench, and we're now beginning to share and visualize these differences. What I think is, it's not a theme, it's not exactly one we've talked about yet, but it's one that these themes lead to, is that within the freight community, and the subset being the maritime part of the freight community, this is a community of practice that's going through a period of rapid innovation. And we're going to be in tension between holding our great ideas to be unique to the ports or the groups or the peer competitors, and sharing those so that they leverage up to scale. And I'm really becoming more and more convinced that thinking about community of practice and the shared ideas is where we shift to a value advantage. Maersk demonstrated that in some ways some years ago in California, where they would make vessels available for experimentation, really, regulatory experimentation. Never without an exit strategy, never with a full commitment, but always with openness and transparency, and that's made a huge difference in the shared understanding of and frankly, as hard as Nick said it is to think that these inventories and our understanding of shipping is very strong, it's not so bad. We've only got 50 or 100,000 vessels. We can almost count every one of them and model each one independently. And what's really interesting is how quickly we've revealed transparency through the sort of shared information. How many tools are up there that kind of do the same thing, and all get different numbers, but they kind of do the same thing. And I'm going to stop there. But it's that commonality, that community that I will choose to take away from these set of meetings.
Anyone else in the first couple rows or any in the
audience want to add anything? I'm happy to bring the microphone to you. Dennis.
I would just share that, I was in a room probably 7 or 8 years ago, very similar to this, on the West Coast. I thought in my career I would never attend a conference called Bunker World, where people were talking about bunker fuels and how difficult it was going to be to switch and how it would ruin the engines in ships and that sort of thing. And through a number of opportunities for people to gather together, whether it was the West Coast Collaborative or whether it was conferences that were held down in Los Angeles and Long Beach to bring ports together, people shared a common vision that there was a need in the United States to have lower emissions from ships for reasons of public health and in some instances to avoid litigation and risk minimization. But people continued to talk. They got together. They made things happen in, I think, a remarkably short period of time by getting the International Maritime Organization to adopt a scheme that would allow emission reductions to occur. But there were ports, there were vessel associations like the World Shipping Council and the Pacific Maritime Shipping Organization Association and environmental groups and citizen groups, and all of those folks came together and continued to meet and convinced folks pretty broadly that they shared a common interest in protecting public health. And we now have an emission control area in place in North America, and it provides consistency and certainty, and there certainly are costs associated with that, but there are huge benefits as well. So I think the key message that I would have for people is that people, I think, here share the same issues. People want their communities to be sustainable. They want their communities to have better air and water and better communities going forward for their children and future generations. So I think if we were able to pull that off in the West Coast of the United States and generate a North American response, people here can do it too. And it's the power of people sharing ideas, sharing visions, sharing opportunities, and coming together to press forward. So this is a very, very good conversation, and I'm really pleased to have participated in this conference here. But that's the lesson from the West Coast of the U.S. is you can bring people that appear to have very disparate interests and different objectives together and find common interests and make things happen.
Thank you, Dennis. Are there other themes or other items to add that folks want to bring up? Yes, Dr. Lai.
I just want to talk about the other themes not captured here. With just one of the slides I remembered, I've seen this afternoon from Freda's presentation in a network, very complicated, lot of different parts. One of it is the component about the final consumer. And I would like to elaborate on this part and also following what Professor Corbett has mentioned about and Simon mentioned about connecting and the community. And what would be the next step in doing so? And also how the consumer think about this. Because if you think back about all this goods movement globally, and is there any research need to look at what would be the impact due to the commercialization of goods or over marketing, so that leading to a kind of a purchase or consumer needs on some products that might not be absolutely necessary to their daily lives. Something, I mean, they just throw the problem back to the government or back to NGOs and they try to say, well, that's not their own responsibility, and no one thinks about their daily lives have to change, and they just think that's the government responsibility. They have to do something, or the business or corporate responsibility. They need to use better technology, but no one has ever thought about this. So if there could be in the future somehow some kind of analysis into the amount of or the extent of impact due to this kind of over commercialization or over marketing, that would be maybe helpful in terms of we eventually have a growing population, and there would be a limit in technology eventually. We will have a limit very soon, and we already seen the problems in climate change. And if we want to tackle the sustainability and also climate change quickly, that is one of the major area I would say the whole world need to think about it, not just relying on technology, government, and everything. I mean, individual thinking on this is also important. Thank you.
What I hear there is a theme of educating awareness broadly on what it is we're talking about here. What are those upstream? What are those consumer demands? What are those doing to our ships and our emissions from ships and creating that problem in the first place? Yeah, that's great. Other things to add from the audience? Okay. Shall we move on? Okay. So we are taking notes on this, so even though you don't see it reflected here on the screen, we are capturing these other themes that we missed here. Okay, we have already started, because we have a very engaged group here, which is good. We've already engaged in discussion already, but we thought we would put up some questions that were pretty focused, but would enable us to begin a discussion with all the various stakeholders to talk about these next steps and some barriers and challenges and opportunities. So, Lisa, would you like to take the first one? Okay.
All right, I'm just going to read it off, and then in order to give everyone a little time to digest the question, I'll answer my own question first. So question number 1, for the next 3 to 5 years, what are the top 2 to 3 priority port, marine vessel, and or goods movement sustainability areas for your port, shipping line, agency, NGO, and or academic institution? So I would say at the Port of Los Angeles, really the first thing that's in line with everything we've been talking about is really developing a sustainability plan. And as Mr. Magai mentioned, we have developed sustainability plans in the future, but they're really a compendium, just all our programs put together. And we recognize at the Port of Los Angeles we've done a lot, but really we ask the question now, just because we have a successful air quality action plan, does that mean it's definitely a sustainable plan, but does that mean our organization is a sustainable organization? And I feel the bridge to sustainability is really a buy-in from your whole organization from top to bottom, understanding sustainability. So we look to create a plan that not only looks at air and water, but also looks at the economic prosperity of the port, the community, and also things like employees, which I like as an employee of the Port of Los Angeles, employee retention and opportunities for employees. So this new plan, we are looking to align more with the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, which is a way to develop metrics, identify material issues which are important to our port, and define ways to measure our goals in a future sustainability plan. So really work on our organization, really embracing the idea of sustainability, understanding it, and creating metrics. Our other 2 were discussed by Mr. Magai in the presentation earlier, and that would be our zero emissions roadmap. We feel in both reducing criteria pollutants and greenhouse gas, really the key to that is moving away from diesel sources onto electricity, and then preferably over the years renewable sources of electricity. So pursuing our technology roadmap for zero emissions is something that's very important for us over the next few years. And third, as many people have mentioned, we all recognize in our inventories for, I guess, the vast majority of ports that vessels are the significant contributor. So continuing working on programs such as the Environmental Ship Index and researching new technologies, providing funding through our technology advancement program for new technologies specifically aimed at reducing emissions from vessels. So those are three main things we'll be looking at in the next few years at the Port of Los Angeles.
Other responses or ideas to add? Yeah, Stephanie.
So for the next, I can start with the next 3 to 5 months priority. The Port of Tacoma, the Port of Seattle, Port Metro Vancouver, and our other partners are working on updating our Northwest Ports Clean Air Strategy with goals for revamping our 2015 goals and setting goals for 2020, setting more hard numeric emission reduction goals. So we should be, we've just released an emissions inventory, so building on that in the next 3 to 5 months, we actually should be releasing that new updated strategy. So that's the first priority on the top of my mind. At the Port of Seattle, we'll also be implementing the next stage of our clean truck program, and figuring out how to do that will be quite challenging. And then I have to say, building off the theme of a sustainability plan, our Port Commission has just actually, since I've been here, approved a 25-year master plan. And one of the 4 main pillars of that plan is environmental. And so while they have goals to triple our harbor throughput, they also have goals to reduce by half at the same time our emissions, and goals for doubling the amount of habitat we have. And so I need to figure out how we're going to do all that in the next 3 to 5 years. So we don't have to do it all in the next 3 to 5 years. We have 25 years, but figuring out how to do that will be I think, a key goal for the next few years.
I'll take this next. For the Port of Tacoma, we're certainly very interested in the Northwest Ports Clean Air Strategy that Stephanie mentioned, but we're also, as part of our strategic plan and our look ahead for the next 10 years, we've got a goal of developing a corporate social responsibility program, which will be a big initiative for the Port of Tacoma that will look at, the economic, social, and environmental impacts of what we do. We're also working on a GRI, Global Reporting Initiative, benchmarking exercise where we would like to develop some sort of annual report to be able to articulate our environmental initiatives at the Port of Tacoma. As part of our strategic plan, we have a goal of remediating, cleaning up 200 acres of contaminated property in the next 10 years and putting that back into productive use. We also have a goal of establishing 50 additional acres of habitat and an emissions goal of reducing 85% of our air emissions from 2005 baseline year. So lots to work towards.
I would love to hear from the academic institutions on 3 to 5 years out, or even shorter term or longer term research that's relevant to shipping emissions, port operations, overall the goods movement system. Any of the academics here on stage, not to put you on the spot.
I'll say it short first. I've been working with the marine sector and emissions for more than 15 years, and over the next 3 to 5 years, our job, at least in academia, my job individually maybe, is to keep up with you. When I started looking at this, I offered a paper to a Society of Naval Architects and Marine Engineers, and it was rejected because there was nothing new. And that paper ended up in the journal Science, where it was perceived as new. The industry's really moving. There's organizations, NGOs, who are doing much better what I did alone in an office as a graduate student 15 years ago. So to keep up, that's the key thing. And what I believe is evidence there, and it relates to what Richard talked about this morning, is that there's been a huge increase in capacity over the last 2 decades with regard to the marine sector and sustainability. And the visions you're asking for are 3 to 5 years. So I think our academic job is to listen to your 3 to 5 year visions, listen to your ambitious targets for 85% reductions, and think 10 to 12 to 15 years out of what might be in your way, so that we can stay engaged and scout the trails that are beyond your windows for blazing.
From Maersk Line's point of view, I guess we have a lot of ambitions, and I outlined those in my presentation this morning about reducing our CO2 and SOx emissions over the next up to 2020. But just thinking about it, the thing at the end of the day is we've got customers, right? So what do the customers want? Really working with them and collaborating with them, building that relationship. That's something that we'll certainly be working on a lot closely. And our suppliers, being the terminals, being the trains, trucking companies, how do we all work together to build that whole supply chain and we take out the emissions that way? So then also continuing on the vessel improvements. We've already got our new builds. After the EEEs, we don't have any new orders on the books. So what do we do with our current network of 500 vessels? How do we continue to optimize them? And then looking at our network. And that's, we continue to slow steam. We're now super slow steaming. What do we do next? And looking to ways to, we can't slow down the vessels even further, so you've got to either look at how your network is set up. So like Stephanie was saying, do you just go into the west coast to service the east coast? Is that more optimal than going through the Panama Canal? Especially now with the big vessels, then you've got a cascading effect where you don't have the big vessels can go through the canal. So what do you need to do? So we continue looking at our network over the next 3 to 5 years. But I must say, we look at our network every day. So it's not something that it's a vision. It's every day that we look at and how we can optimize it and be more competitive as well. And that's it.
Well, I think Civic Exchange's plan for the next 3 to 5 years is very straightforward. Following up on our research work related to the Pearl River Delta, I think we will try to engage Hong Kong government and the Guangdong government, and to make sure that to deliver an emission control area is on their agenda. And then in the next few years, they are going to make progress in that respect. Of course, along that way, we hopefully will be able to provide more research findings. But more importantly is to raise public awareness about the importance of getting ECA, not just for Hong Kong people, but also for everyone living in the Pearl River Delta, as you have seen in some of the pictures that I've shown and from other speakers. This is a small area with lots of population and probably the densest area for maritime activities in the world. So, if we can pull that off, we will be making tremendous progress in terms of protecting public health in this particular region. So this is our main goal. Of course, there are other things that we'd like to do. But as I said, we only have so many people in the office, so that is what we can commit and hopefully we can achieve in the next few years.
So I just wanted to add the perspective to that question from the Port of Oakland. And I would say for the next 3 to 5 years, the top 2 or 3 would be first to complete the projects that we have initiated. So at the Port of Oakland, that would be the projects under the Maritime Air Quality Improvement Plan, notably our shore power project, our comprehensive truck management project, and to complete the inventory, the emissions inventory update and the related health risk assessment. Why do I mention completing what we've said we were going to do? Because I think it's very important in terms of building trust with our stakeholders that we actually complete the plans that we've invested so much time and energy in. So I think trust is one of the themes that we haven't talked about a lot, but I think it's very important to execute on what you've said you were going to do. So I wanted to mention that. So that's definitely, and I heard that from my colleagues here as well, that all of us are very focused right now on the practical implementation of the projects that we've initiated a couple of years ago. Then also echoing what Jason said in Tacoma, again, the concept of sustainability really brings together environmental stewardship, social equity concerns, and economic prosperity or economic growth. And so for the Port of Oakland, we are definitely focused on making that link between the port's growth and jobs. We have to be able to show that the work that we're doing has a positive benefit on the local economy and that people are able to connect to the economic activity of the port. And finally, something else that we haven't mentioned, so I thought I would just mention it, is we're really, in terms of sustainability, I think we have to look ahead at the future generations, the next generations who are coming, namely students and children. And so we're really working on initiatives to try to bring these concepts into the educational system. And in Oakland, that means working very closely with the Maritime Academy, and in other words, working in the other direction, making sure that there are curricula and opportunities within the Maritime Academy, the people who are going to be running the ships and the merchant marines in this particular area. So I would mention those that as well. The educational aspect of this we see as really critical.
If I may, I have to say thank you. I'm a graduate of the Maritime Academy near Oakland, and when I went through in the 80s, I had one air pollution control class. Pollution control class. Didn't mention air. Basically, if you could make it not float, it wasn't polluting. So you put heavy things in so that it would sink. Anyway, it's a very, very great opportunity, and the idea, one specific thing that we are working on, I try to hold back some branding or other sorts of things because it's really meant to be inclusive, is we've been developing a model that we call GIFT, and it's a intermodal freight model that can look for origin to destination pairs, and we can route 5,000 or 6,000 origin destination pairs in one large study. That doesn't take very long. Replicating the kinds of work that was done in a smaller scale for the Port of Seattle and has often been shown even in these last 2 days. The important thing is that these examples sometimes disagree with each other, and yet they're both right. And so our goal was to develop a model, a visualization model, that would allow diverse groups of people to come together and put in the information they want, and then look for common patterns at scale. What's going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years is Maersk already looks at its network at scale. What it may or may not do is include what would happen if the planners change the infrastructure sooner than Maersk has decision authority over. That might change their performance. So what we want to do is sort of create what I call a performance multiplier effect, where we can visualize multiple things together. Change the drayage trucks and compare that to on-dock rail and enlarge the vessels and slow them down and abate them, and then see what works and realize that you can get to where you need to be with good port planning and what we're already doing, or you can't get there even when you throw everything together. That gift of vision is something that can't be done for you by academics or anybody else. It has to be a tool that is not just a spreadsheet calculator, but a visualization tool that can be carried continent to continent. And a lot of what we've talked about today, the whole mission of this this conference seems to be carrying that visibility continent to continent.
Okay. We've got Mr. Trocha.
At the US EPA, we have a lot of international partners and friends who care about the environment. And it's not only the folks in this room who are doing things to protect the environment and drive sustainability, but we also get questions from partners who couldn't make it today. There's a lot of demand for this knowledge and expertise, and we hope to continue bringing folks together to not only share their expertise on the current topics like air quality, trucks, fuels, and things like that, but also to start talking about topics that we haven't gone so deep in yet, such as climate adaptation, which a lot of ports are going to be facing, and the hardiness of the ports, if that is the correct word, water protection, and continued collaboration with communities to make sure the communities that drive the economy and work in our ports, and our consumers as well, are healthy. So I can only speak for the next 2 years. Our goal and primary objective is to continue bringing as many partners together, expanding this dialogue to include mainland China, Japan, Singapore, Brazil, and some of our friends in the Pacific, to have a broader conversation. Hopefully we will do that in 2013, and I'll save that for an announcement later. But I wanted to at least articulate what our vision is at US EPA, and obviously collaborating with our existing partners and bringing new partners in.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I think we should move on to the next question, which I think we have in part already addressed, but we'll allow for some time to discuss it. So what challenges or barriers have your organizations, your institutions, encountered with regard to implementing sustainability strategies? I know we've talked about some already: cost, political will. There are lots of challenges and barriers, but I wanted to open that up for us to air out, and so that we have that heard by everybody here in the forum here. Anybody?
Well, I think I would like to start by saying that in this room, I think everyone realized that ship emission and port emission are really important factors that affect human health. So it's a very pressing issue that we need to address as soon as possible. But when it comes to a national emission control or air management policy, usually different countries will have different priorities. Now, this is my experience with, say, mainland China, or in particular in Guangdong. They've got so many coal-fired power plants right now. They've got, factories emission. They have to deal with road vehicles. So ships and ports emission actually further down, has been pushed down the priority list. And I think this is something that we need to understand. In Hong Kong, we've got fairly clean power plant right now. We, of course, still have roadside air pollution problem. But ship emissions is becoming more and more important because, relatively speaking, all the other major emission sources and their relative share has been going down. So ship emissions is something that's going up, and this gives us a lot of reasons why the government has to do something quickly. But it's not the case, say, in Guangdong or in maybe even Taiwan, I don't know. So I think as we try to push for better strategies in a certain city like in Hong Kong, in Kaohsiung, and any other port cities to try and cut down emissions, I think we also have to realize, as we work together with the government, that they've got other consideration that we need to, I think, understand. And this usually will, become a barrier, I would put it that way, for us, because I really want to, make the change tomorrow. But, for them, this is not the most important thing, so they will, do it later. And I think this is important that we understand this.
Okay.
I just want to mention what I think is often a barrier in organizations in terms of implementing sustainability, and that is shifting priorities. So several years ago, sustainability may have been an important topic, and then in the United States, at least, we had the terrible recession, and everyone got very focused on just trying to stabilize business. So I think shifting priorities are often a challenge in terms of the continuity and the time horizon that we're working with sustainability. So I think, what is the response to that? I think, again, I talked today about organizational capacity. I think we need to build within our organization certainly a team of advocates. We also continuously need leadership at the top. It's very important for the chief executive, the president, to be an advocate for this. And then as a tool that we did use at the Port of Oakland, we did require that all actions by our board undergo a sustainability analysis. So it is a requirement of anyone at the port who promotes an action before our board to perform a sustainability analysis. Now, often, in reality, the person promoting that action will come to the environmental division and ask us to perform the analysis. They need some, what we call, hand-holding, some guidance. But I think it's beginning to become more integrated into the organizational mindset. So this is a tool that we use to overcome the barrier by making it a standard part of the analysis. In the same way you would do a financial analysis, return on investment, you have to do an environmental analysis. We also perform a sustainability analysis. And that seems to at least keep the conversation alive and growing.
From Taiwan, like to add?
For the information of the many foreigner or American friends, Taiwan EPA was established 25 years ago in 1987. Next year, there is a chance EPA will be upgraded to a Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources. And for the past 25 years, EPA paid a lot of attention to improve air quality. So, for example, in Taipei City, despite the fact the number of vehicles is still increasing, yet our air quality is getting better. You know, there's a number of measures has been taken. For example, we tighten up the emission standard. We keep improving fuel quality. And also we expand the mass rapid transit. All those measures to help improving air quality. Yet in Kaohsiung City, because of heavy industry and also probably the port contribution, the air quality in Kaohsiung still have a room for improvement. As far as port management is under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Communication and Transportation. So as a government agency of Taiwan EPA, we had to work very closely with Ministry of Communication and Transportation for regulatory consultation and certainly for enforcement aspect. So I would say Taiwan EPA will pay more attention to the port environmental concern in the near future, since the land-based pollution pretty much under control. But the marine related pollution probably deserve more attention from the environmental authority and also from the transportation authority. And that's my first comment.
In Taiwan. So, the Port of Kaohsiung, we follow all the policy and the regulation. And for my opinion, I think the last challenge is the media, and we have asked all the support from all people, because every policy, when they make decision, they have through some hearing meeting from, I think, Legislative Yuan in Taiwan. Just like this, our ports, Echo Islands, will have a hearing meeting in Legislative Yuan Thursday this week. Yes, I just got the notice. So I think education from the university and the school is very important for all the people. And the medium is the most important for us, especially in Taiwan, because of the television and the newspaper and even the broadcasting station, they have a great influence to all the people. I think if this healthy concept can carry out and promote to all people, I think it's very easy for us to do this.
Thank you for that. That's definitely seems to link well with the theme from earlier, is educating people about the benefits and getting the information out there, and the media being one way to do that. So it's a tool for overcoming some of the barriers. Yeah, excellent.
Okay, let's move on to discussion topic number 3. Under the heading of sustainability, why is this really necessary for ports, vessels, and the goods movement system? So if we were having this conference 5 years ago, it probably wouldn't be called a sustainability conference. It's a relatively new term that everyone's embracing. So what I want to know from you is this the appropriate term? What is it about sustainability that makes this applicable to our operation? Is it necessary to discuss this in the theme of sustainability? Is this an efficiency issue? Is this an air quality issue? What is it about sustainability that makes it the appropriate term in this industry at this time?
I have a shot. I think for Maersk it comes back to our core values for our company under constant care, preparing today for tomorrow. So whether you call it sustainability or constant care, for us that's how our company has been formed. So I think it's important. Certainly, we're talking about it earlier. There's the cost element and the monetary benefits you get from having a sustainable network and something that you can put in for the long term. But I think we've got to do our part. We're a big player in the global economy. We do a lot. We've just got to play our part to make sure that it continues to operate, because airlines aren't going to be able to carry the cargo. It's going to have to be on container vessels. So we have to find a way to make it for the future, for our kids, our children's children, right? So, and the population is just going to continue to grow. What we've got to look at is also how trade changes over the years, whether China becomes an import country in the future rather than an export country. So continue looking at ways and how the economy is changing. But yeah, as I said, for Maersk Line, it's about sustainability is constant care for us. That's how we look at it.
I think that's an interesting question. I'm willing to sort of stick my neck out and watch it get hacked off, because this is a sustainability conference. But the sustainability label is really one of convenience for bringing us together. It actually is rather vague, and it could be traded away for constant care, or coming from the maritime tradition. The sailors of the world, since the Phoenicians, have always paid attention to the care of the vessel and the service of the economy in their trade. And what we were able to do with innovation in engine and hull technologies and cheap energy is devote our services to overpowering the nature we travel through on those oceans. With the largest engines, most advanced engines in the world, and to pay very, very good attention at using the least amount of energy to go as fast as needed. And so I think really in the freight sector, reliability is the only immovable criteria for performance. The service must be reliable. 5-10 years ago, nobody would have told a room this size or smaller that just-in-time inventory would allow slower volumes unilaterally and trade warehouse space for frequent deliveries. Nobody would have agreed to that because we had had 2 or 3 decades of very low energy and high mortgage prices on real estate and consignment. So under the heading sustainability, I think the real idea is what's needed here is a reattention to stewardship and care and a recognition that reliable service has more solutions than the one that we trained the last 2 decades of MBAs to believe was the only one.
Any other input on sustainability and why we need it or don't? Yes.
Hi, my name is Pei Ling. I would like to add up another perspective regarding of the real estate price in the port area. For your reference, in order to encourage more brownfield redevelopment, Taiwan here in Kaohsiung, since early this summer, we've been adding 10% more zoning possibility, sort of rezoning area in urbanized area. So during the discussion, it's about building code regulation modification. During the discussion, we do have a certain discussion in regarding of this port area. I won't say the challenge, but the dilemma we are dealing with is that the locals, we do love waterfront properties in terms of residential or commercials. You can picture like those high-end residential property down in Battery Park in Lower Manhattan or like waterfront in Toronto. That's everything technically we can do, and we are looking forward the prospective value come out after whatever you guys are doing. But the dilemma we are dealing with is the extreme weather. So what I want to say is all the sustainability strategy or politics or everything you do really matters to us. But no matter how soon you guys move on, you cannot stop the next summer storm because it's coming next year. For what we are doing now is we are adding extra tank in the basement in order to deal with the sudden rainstorms or the shortage of water. So that's what I'm saying. It's like whatever you guys do is really matters to local waterfront in terms of property value, the real community qualities. You know, sustainability is not just the balance between poor prosperities or wildlife or whatever international business. But the real matter is down to a human scale. I'm an architect. What really a kind of lifestyle local residents naturally deserve, because we belong here, we grow up here, and we do care. So here, I was downstairs, upstairs, back and forth, because you guys actually divided port business and the city business into 2 floors. I really want you guys to know everything you've done is really matters to us. As an architect, I'm like the next step, whatever you guys do. So yeah, that's the point I'm going to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. I think that's extremely important and something that we oftentimes can miss, that the development opportunity, the accessibility to the waterfront and the stability of the waterfront in terms of climate impacts, as you mentioned, extreme weather events, is extremely important, and I think gets at a little bit of what Luis Trocha mentioned a little earlier, and that is the sort of hardiness or the stability or resilience, I forgot the term you used, adaptation. You know, when we're thinking about climate change and the effects of climate change, how are the ports adapting to that? And also the port waterfront redevelopment opportunities. How is that being adapted to deal with the climatic impacts or impacts from climate change? So thank you for adding that. That was extremely valuable.
I would just like to add as well, I applaud those comments, and in fact, I stand corrected. When you look at ports, vessels, and goods movement, the word sustainability has the ability to be replaced by other words. When you put it in the context that you did, the service of the ports, vessels, and goods movement to the sustainability of your community is the reason why it's still that needs to be the heading, and I really appreciate the correction.
With this lady's suggestion and opinion, because I think this issue for a long time, just for my personal opinion, I think every sustainable or environmental protection is contrast. It's not forever, because we just use the, now, present, like building, when destroy and redevelop this area, and we want to establish new green building, and every standard is follow the green building classification or specification. I think compare with now and after, we saw a lot of from the briefing. I think it's better, and when we redevelop the recreation and waterfront area, we want to increase another, I think, 10,000 jobs in this area. We can supply for the people and the residents, the business and the occupation here. In the same time, I think every process and every work we have to do step by step, but in the long run, it's a long time. I think every kingdom, they want the long live the king. We want the long live the port, long live the business, and long live the people. Thank you.
Nicely said.
Okay, thank you. Chairperson, everybody, good afternoon. In talking about first challenge or barriers in regarding to implementing sustainability strategy from central government status, or maybe from my individual opinion, I think from these 2 days conference, I think I learned a lot from you. I think the most challenging for central government, how to cooperate the partners. You need to cooperate. Maybe the public, the ship company, and local EPBs. I think every partners what they want. They will ask you, what's the benefit? For me, you doing implementing sustainability strategy. What's the action plan measures? It can benefit for me. So I think the most barriers for a government, even central or for local EPBs, the most barrier is how to persuade, how to show your partners, if you're doing this, you can give them benefit. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Chong.
So I just wanted to also applaud your comments and introduce a concept that I think does relate to the question, why is this important? So the concept that I think we need to put on the board there is quality of life. It's important because ports and the cities that host the ports have a very special relationship. And I think going to what Professor Corbett said, and my experience in the port sector, is that the ports and their cities have always been open. The tradition of port cities is they've always been open to the exchange of new ideas. They've been open to the world in a way. All port cities are open to the world. So we have a very special obligation to ensure that the work that we do and the promotion of trade is not at the detriment of the quality of life of the very communities that are hosting the port activity. So I think the reason this is important is to ensure that as ports prosper, which of course can have a real benefit on the national economy, the regional economy, we don't do this to the expense of the very communities that are hosting us. So I would put quality of life up there. And then I would certainly add a theme to our beginning theme, which was, I think we talked about when we saw Lisa talked about it when we saw the beautiful video about the port of Kaohsiung. I think ports are in a unique position to present a vision, a big vision, a bold vision that can be a magnet to solve problems, and also to be leaders, to be in a position of leadership. I think we can use our leadership position to sometimes overcome some of the other barriers that out there. That would be in the best tradition of ports and port cities.
To build on those quality of life comments, the Port of Los Angeles is a little over 100 years old. It was first incorporated in 1907. And people immigrated to the area that's now our adjacent communities, and the port was a source of balance and harmony with the community. People worked at the port, people fished at the port, they had their social life near the port, and then in years and years of the port growing bigger and bigger, this equilibrium went out of balance. So it's really bringing this balance back to the community and the port working together.
Thank you. Just talking about quality of life from a public health angle. For patients who got a damage to like stroke or heart attack or any kind of disease or long-term or chronic diseases they are suffering, we calculate also the same time quality of life and what would be the impact to the whole life long and how much would be affecting their daily life activities and what would be the change. So this is also a similar but interpret in a different way. Just want to add to this.
Well, in the interest of time, I would like to move on to the last question, which really takes us into our last slide on next steps. And that is really, what's the best way to continue cross-Pacific collaboration on sustainability, stewardship, what have you, topics around ports, marine vessels, with the goods movement system going forward. So, next steps. The first one, Lisa, do you want to take this one? Okay,
sure.
Yep.
Okay, number 1. Form work groups to flesh out priority sustainability topics leveraging the Pacific Coast Clean Air Collaborative. Work groups of emissions control, health impacts, and best practices. And I should provide a little background first on what we mean by some of this. First, a little bit of background on the Pacific Ports Clean Air Collaborative. In 2006, the ports of Los Angeles, Port of Shanghai, the U.S. EPA, and the U.S. Maritime Administration all came together to form the Pacific Ports Clean Air Collaborative. There's currently over 100 entities, not only ports, but shipping lines, regulators, non-governmental organizations, and others interested in facilitating the discussion between Pacific Rim ports. So we've had 3 meetings so far since 2006. In 2006, the Port of Los Angeles held the first meeting. In 2008, the second meeting was held in Shanghai. And the third meeting was held just in February 2012, and it was with a sustainability theme. And in that meeting, we polled our participants afterwards, and we came up with 3 future areas of concentration that we might like to further discuss, because while it's good to meet every 2 years, we really want to keep that dialogue going and have it be an effective conference that really leads towards solutions. So when our participants voted, the 3 categories that they came up with were emissions control, and that's really looking at specific air and water plans that have been implemented, health impacts, which we've discussed, and best practices, much like our last panel. And I have to thank the US EPA for really using this symposium as a mechanism for the first step in furthering these discussions. We've had 3 panels that really focused in on these 3 areas. So what we'd like to do, and what we'd like your participation on, if interested, is to become involved in working groups to discuss 1, 2, or all 3 of these topics. We're looking to facilitate them via webinars or other ways where we don't have to travel around the world to see each other and be able to talk in smaller groups. So we have different ways where you can become involved. Penny's actually going to hand out some paper where you could sign up. Also, the website for the Pacific Ports Clean Air Collaborative is ppcac.org, and you can go there and find out more information about that. Let's see if I know. Okay.
Great. And I just want to add a little bit extra here. We have really appreciated the PPCAC's leadership on advancing the discussion on sustainability, and we were thrilled to work with the ports that have been involved in the PPCAC and advancing the discussions around the 3 topic areas that have been identified by many of the port and vessel and goods movement sector as the top 3 groups or topics of interest going forward. But I would like to mention that if there are additional topic areas that are of interest, I would encourage you to please let us know in this discussion or offline. We'd be very much interested in hearing about those as well. And as Lisa mentioned, the lists are going around, so if you're interested in participating in these work groups, whether it be to listen in or to actually contribute information and expertise, we'd love to have your participation. Those are going around now, so please sign up if you're interested. And I think Luis might have wanted to add something. You're on the edge of your seat.
I've been listening to all the conversations going on, and I think in addition to the topics that Lisa mentioned, I would like to pose a question or an idea. A thing that I heard frequently come up is consistency and cost effectiveness. So one of the things we haven't discussed is, do we have work groups or ways to look at how do we work together across the Pacific to help enhance the consistency and the cost effectiveness? Because I keep hearing from Maersk and others that practices that are common across the Pacific will drive costs down and adoption up. So we can talk about air quality, health impacts, and things like that, but I think we also need to look at the strategic implementation or facilitating that discussion. The other thing that I've been hearing is some ports are very advanced and experts at communicating the health impacts and also the benefits and the cost benefits of the actions that those ports are taking. Other ports and other authorities are looking for messages and information that they can use to overcome barriers in communication with other ministries, whether they be ministries of transportation or local ministries. So those of us who have this information, who have done it before, maybe, Penny, we can work on developing one-pagers or cheat sheets that have certain messages that can be used to convey the messages and overcome barriers to bring partners together. So I didn't want to forget to mention that because it's things that we can add to our list of items that we could advance through this collaboration.
Thank you. The next step here, I know Luis had mentioned it, and Lisa had mentioned it as well. For the next year here in 2013, which is just around the corner, this summer, and we don't have a date certain at this point, but this summer we are planning to host another forum, U.S. Asia Pacific Ports Forum, probably on the west coast of the United States, but you would need to stay tuned if you're interested. Also put your name down as well so we can contact you if you're interested in participating in that. We strongly encourage broad participation from partners in China and Indonesia and elsewhere, in Taiwan, obviously, Hong Kong, and other partners in the region. So that's something that we will be organizing and facilitating, and would like to take this discussion to the next level and really continue to advance the dialogue in a much more, I think, focused and meaty way. I think we're going to have probably more time, but we still have yet to work that out. So stay tuned for that. That's something that we have slated and that we're going to be doing on the West Coast. And then finally, I'm going to let Lisa do the third point for the PPCAC in 2014.
I hope over the next few years, really, the EPA and the PPCAC, all the work that we're doing, I look toward it as merging really into one activity with the same stakeholders, because we know disparate activities leads to separation of groups. So although we're using different names right now, we hope this is all going to roll into one big collaborative effort. And for people who haven't joined the PPCAC, who want to be on the mailing list, you can also sign up for that either by noting on the handouts that are coming out or by going again to ppcac.org. And I'm very happy to see many people in the audience who did come to our conference in February. And the next conference, we hope that in the past we've had them every 2 years. We didn't have it in 2010 because of the economic recession at the time. But we are starting just very preliminary to consider ports that may want to host in 2014 for this next discussion. So maybe start to think about that and let us know if your port may have an interest in hosting this in 2014.
And then finally, I want to open it up again to next steps that, we're unaware of that are being planned, or next steps that you would like to see happen that would enable the partners here and beyond to continue our dialogue and continue action and planning and strategizing around sustainability at ports and marine vessels. So no pressure, but if you have anything that you'd like to share on that, please feel free to do that now or offline as well.
Just one idea. I think the importance of being able to share each other's best practices is key. And we've had presentations which have been really informative, but it only gets at the surface. And I think if there was a place where we could, and perhaps it's the website for this event or the PPCAC, where we could have access to two things. One, the contacts of the people who are here. And secondly, some of the things that were referenced here, like the toolbox that you referred to, or certainly our calculator we'd be willing to put there, or there's other tools that other people that I think if they were in one place that we could access, or at least access the people that could get us to those tools, I think that would be very helpful.
That's a great idea, and it is something we have considered with our PPCAC website as the working groups get off the ground, to have specific web pages for each working group and have it be a place where we could post, where people could post information and share. Kevin.
I think that overall this has been an excellent symposium, and one that's being planned next year is an excellent idea. I just want to see, kind of pick everyone's brain, I guess, collectively, on what we can do to build momentum off of this, so that there's not a dead period from now until the next symposium, and that the next symposium is formulated in a way that is just not a repeat of this, but it really builds off of this. I see this as the first step, and I want to keep moving forward with every subsequent symposium. So I just want to ensure that that happens moving forward.
Kevin, that is an excellent point. And when Penny and I were working with Kaohsiung EPD and Taiwan EPA and AIT, one of the things we had in mind was to plan for the next 2 years. And I think we're jumping to the closing remarks, but one of the things we would like to do is communication and action between now and the next forum. So we're not talking only about what we're doing, but the results we have achieved and the ideas we're sharing to take the solutions to the next level. I see a lot of opportunity for that based on the conversations and the presentations that I've heard, but obviously we as EPA cannot push that. We need to partner with you guys. We're already partners with the U.S. ports, so we'd like to continue partnering with the NGOs who can help us advance the conversation at different levels, and partner with industry. So we can also not only recognize the advances that industry has made, but also hopefully promote these practices to become more common in the marketplace. And obviously we're open to any ideas from folks like Mr. Corbett, who's always thinking creatively.
Jason, I think you had something to...
So I was thinking a lot about what Stephanie and Kevin were saying, and Luis, you answered part of my question. I'm not even sure it's a question, but we are all very engaged and very supportive of this. We've learned a lot. We're excited about being sustainable and the lessons learned at this conference. But we all know the realities of the day, that we'll go back to our regular jobs. And, you know, you heard about my staff of 13, and there's a lot of port business to do. And so it's easy to get, I'll use the word distracted, but it's really not distracted. It's just taking care of what we need to be taken care of. So I'm wondering, I'm looking to EPA in this example, and if there's a role for you all to play as facilitators, so that there isn't that dead period for the next year, and so that you can ping us and coordinate and make sure that, that you know, this is a continuing conversation. I know that's a lot to ask, but I'll go there anyway.
You asked for it, and we're already planning to do it. There's, in our Asia-Pacific portfolio at US EPA, the international office, there's only 3 of us who work with our partners in Greater China. That is mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan. There's a few other partners who work with Indonesia and partners around the world. But there's a lot of interest in this topic, and one of the things that Penny and I are planning to do, for example, is share these presentations on the web with those partners who are very interested in this, to create more interest and momentum on the conversation. The forum has been recorded, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to share it recorded online as well. And Penny and I will be coming to you guys to plan the next symposium, but also to look for opportunities where some of the partners who are coming to us and asking questions about how do I handle trucks, how do I handle road planning, urban planning, and they're looking for information, maybe you can be a host for a week and share your expertise. So hopefully all you have to do is invest your time instead of money, and you can help advance the conversation where we all have a similar understanding of the needs and the opportunities. Hopefully we can help advance implementation. Moving forward, definitely would like to hear more ideas on how to make that efficient, because I know all of us have limited resources.
If I can balance being maybe a little bit leapfrogging and still try to be specific at the same time, see if you can pull me back to grounding on this. Today, let me just make sure I get his name. Today, Mr. Chen from the Kaoming Container Terminal Corporation, I believe it was his presentation that spent a lot of time talking about how much they had done to innovate and become greener. And at first look, most of what I saw was ways to create automated and transparent communication and visibility. So they had these gates that were quicker because they had RFID, and they had other sorts of things. That functionality is really huge. What it does is it creates a common, shareable knowledge of how the operation's working. And I'm reminded of our cell phones, that the cell phones in every several of us has more computing power than some of the early mainframes. We're at a point where we're looking at PPAC, these other organizations. We can think about mainframing and putting everything in one place and making sure it's all the same, or we can recognize some advantages in having each one of you with the ability to do something independently with the tools, that the diversity of the tools. And it's going to be both that we need. I remember, many of you aren't old enough, but I remember when it was really difficult to share files from one word processor to another. Everybody had to decide how to consolidate. We're at that decision point in some of this dialogue right now. I think one of the things we can do in the next months is make sure that we work on cross-sharing. One of the things we've been working on very hard with the gift model, not to say this is the only or even the best, because that would go counter to my message, is we want our model to be data neutral and scalable to the different kinds of questions you're asking, and problem-focused rather than method-focused. So we've got a variety of toolboxes we've seen. It'd be great to just see if we can get the same signs out of the results, same numbers. It'd be great to know if the people in the room that want to use the model that they know the best through the organization they see the best is good enough to keep them thinking, so that we don't lose that momentum if they need the numbers. Or that kind of commonality. That would be one thing I think, and really what it does is it gets back to Luis's really important remarks. The 3 items on number 1 are the what that PPAC members have decided to do. The comments that Luis added was the how to do those 3 things so that they are cross-informed and widely shareable.
Well, actually, if I may add to James' comment, during the gap year, is it useful for USCPA, say, to ask from each major stakeholders, what are their priorities or what are the key areas they would like to get more information about or focus on in the next couple of years before the next symposium, and you then try to do some matching, so that for those who are more advanced or who's got a lot more knowledge to share with, can be teamed up with some of the other, stakeholders. It's like, an adoption program or a mentorship program or whatever, so that we can pull people closer together into clusters, without losing our, longer vision or broader perspective. But still, we can, focus on the things that is really pressing or really important for that particular port or that particular stakeholder group to advance in the coming year. Maybe that's something that you would also consider.
Okay, thank you for that. That was an excellent, I think, point to end on, and I think we do need to conclude so that we can move on to our actual closing remarks. But I would like to thank all of the panelists up here for participating, and everybody in the audience, all of our panelists here that are not up on the stage, for participating, and for everybody who has taken the time to come and listen in and learn and share, and hopefully sign up for participation in the future to provide your input, to listen in and learn more. I'm very happy for the turnout here, and I think I speak for my colleague Luis Trocha that we couldn't have been more pleased with how this symposium has turned out. And without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Mr. Dennis McLaren to provide us with some closing remarks for our symposium. Dennis.
Well, it's been a bit long and productive, however, 2 days, and so I'm going to be relatively brief in these closing remarks. But it has been an honor for me to be here in Kaohsiung to collaborate with the Kaohsiung Environmental Protection Bureau, the American Institute in Taiwan, and our colleagues and partners of many years at Taiwan Environmental Protection Administration. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining us, and also all of our expert panelists for sharing their time and expertise. It's been a really great gathering, and I hope I can speak for everyone here when I say that it's been a productive dialogue. It's been a great exchange of experience and ideas to achieve and advance sustainability or stewardship, or however we want to frame it going forward. And I think everybody does share an objective to grow the economies, provide jobs, stimulate our businesses while maintaining and enhancing environmental quality, social responsibility, and public health. And those are some of the hallmarks, I think, of sustainability. And just a couple of highlights for me, as Mayor Ju Chen and Vice Mayor Liu presented us yesterday. I'm thrilled to learn of the vision here in Kaohsiung to make Kaohsiung a sustainable and resilient city, with plans to implement green transportation, protect wetlands, develop green spaces, and transform from an industrial economy to a greener economy. And I think I was very impressed with the video and the vision to create the Asian New Bay that integrates the marine port with economic growth, environmental sustainability, green living, and community health. So I applaud Kaohsiung. I think that's going to be a really big lift to get that done, and I look forward to coming back and seeing it when it's actually underway and things are being achieved. And I think through this forum we've learned a lot of the current efforts that people are taking to advance sustainability. We're seeing from companies, we've heard from ports, we've heard from NGOs, we've heard from academic experts. It's really great to see that I think we're on the verge of the evolution, the next steps in evolution of this effort in technology and practices and in the movements of goods. And I would very much like to see some of what we're seeing on the west coast of the U.S. Be achieved here in Asia Pacific, and very encouraged by hearing the efforts of IPCC and the folks from Hong Kong and the NGOs. So I think a lot yet to happen, but we're on the verge of seeing it happen. So in this context, I think we've come together as friends and colleagues to work together on the next set of solutions, and they're going to be very valuable as we implement the next evolution in the movement of goods. And as several of the speakers have stated, there's really strength in numbers and strength in consistency. And one of the things that I've seen in the work that I've been involved in now for almost 10 years across the U.S. is that when you do bring people together and you do share the stories and you share the information about what the compelling needs are, it builds a movement and it builds a strength, and things happen. So I'm looking forward to seeing things happen in our next conference. I think we have heard a lot of information here that impressed me about how much of the world's shipping activity goes on in Asia, and the concentration of that activity in Asia Pacific that is important to know and to act on. Similarly, when we were faced with that kind of information and the information about health effects, we were stimulated to act on the west coast of the U.S. I know when I heard Dr. Corbett's presentations a number of years back, when I got information from stakeholders about why it was important to protect our communities, that was what inspired me to get involved and engaged in this, and it inspired many people up and down the west coast of the U.S. and across the country to get engaged. So again, I think I see the same thing happening here with this exchange of information. People will realize how important this is. But I have been pleased that not only have we made new friends here, we did get a chance to meet with old friends again here. And I think many of those friends have a vision and a commitment to achieving sustainability. I see new players in the room too, like Indonesia, which it's great to have the Indonesian folks here. And I think what we're looking for going forward is what does the next conference look like? What does the future look like? I think we're all going to have to work together to develop an agenda for that and to develop further the solutions that we've talked about here. So I'm looking forward to how we be successful in trying to frame up that agenda for the next set of meetings and conferences going forward. If it's just another exchange like this, we won't have advanced, we won't have moved forward. So I'm looking forward to all of you helping us frame what that next set of meetings looks like, what our objectives should be, what progress we can make between now and then, and what we can tee up for that next discussion. And I think it's great to have been here in Kaohsiung. Taiwan is in a unique position now, I think, to be a leader, to become a leader and a model in this region in marine port and vessel sustainability. I think we saw a lot of very encouraging things presented from people here in Taiwan. And Kaohsiung's vision to become a sustainable city and achieve the new Asia Bay presents a unique opportunity for Taiwan to develop and adopt the best possible sustainability practices and to achieve the economic, environmental, and social results that people are looking for here. So if that is implemented successfully, that can become a model for the region in Asia Pacific. So I encourage people here to act on that and make sure that vision comes true. Equally important, I think it's important for our U.S. ports to continue their efforts moving forward. I've been away from the work with the ports for a couple of years, but had been very, very involved for 5 or 6 years before that, and it's really good for me to get back and hear where they're at, how they've updated their plans, what the next steps are, what the future holds for the U.S. ports as well. And I think I'm also looking forward in the next forum for some of our partners that weren't able to join us today from Asia Pacific to be part of that discussion. We've had in the past Shanghai, Hong Kong, Japan, and Korea partnering with EPA, and I'd like to see if we can get them to our next set of meetings and conferences on this so that they can become a continuing part of the dialogue and the conversation. And perhaps part of that agenda planning for the next meeting is to have some of their stories, some of their experiences, some of their challenges presented as well. I also think probably a broader conversation with some of the supply chain folks. We heard a lot about supply chain interactions here, but we didn't have many people from the supply chain part of this joining us, and I think that's a very powerful, growing movement. The folks that are wanting to be green and wanting to see their supply chain be green are a very powerful economic force, and so having them as part of the conversation in the next piece of this I think is very important as well. So maybe in closing here, I think we count on your participation again as we go forward, and we are going to be holding that next meeting somewhere on the west coast of the U.S. in 2013. We haven't decided on the venue yet. It could be Seattle. It could be Los Angeles. I see Luis going thumbs up for Seattle. So we'll try and make that happen. But in conclusion, I think we've really built a solid foundation with this meeting that builds on past conversations. But I really want us to build the momentum for a stronger next meeting. One that is not just a repeat of what we've done here, but really does take us to the next steps, gets the right people in the room to move this further. So with that, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's been a participant here, all of the experts that we've had here, all of those in the audience that have put really great questions forward, and So I look forward to convening this again next year and building on this collaboration. So please, everyone, give yourselves a round of applause for the hard work that's been done over the last 2 days. And I look forward to the port tour tomorrow morning.
I think there's nothing further to say. I think we are adjourned, and thank you again to everybody.